Hi, I'm Jaime Casap, and welcome to my studio here in Phoenix, Arizona. Obviously, I wish I could be in person with you. When we planned this, I think everyone was looking forward to all of this stuff being behind us and being able to be in person live so that we can interact, so that we can network. It's just, you get a different sense. It's been a long time since we've all been in one room at the same time, and nobody misses it more than I do. I love standing on stages and interacting and getting energy from the audience. So let's do this. As you are listening to me speak, please follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, follow me on LinkedIn. My message button on all the platforms are open. And as you're listening and you have feedback or you have ideas or something sticks with you or you have a question, make sure you use those platforms to ask me, and I will interact with those and I'll answer those as much as I possibly can. So definitely follow me on those platforms, especially Instagram. This is a personal request because my wife has more subscribers than I do on Instagram, and she rubs it in my face every day. So I'm on this secret mission to try to beat her this year. So please follow me on Instagram. I'm a photographer. You'll see lots of great photos that I'm posting on there. Anyway, Jaime Casap, Jaime Casap, depending on what language you speak, and I was the Chief Education Evangelist at Google. I have been at Google for 15 years. I started out on the engineering team, working across different projects, and one of the projects was to figure out a good engineering project to work with ASU, and it just so happened that email was one of their biggest problems when I met with the CIO. And next thing you know, back in 2006, we launched this idea called Google Apps for Education at Arizona State University, and Google Apps was born. I fell in love with the idea of what we could do with technology and education, and so I am one of the few people at Google, if anyone else has ever done this, I've never heard of it, who actually left the engineering group to join the enterprise group because I wanted to be in front of schools, I wanted to be in front of education institutions, I wanted to be in front of universities. That's how deep I got into this upfront 15 years ago. So two of us launched Google Apps, and we went around the country working with universities. A couple of years in, I got this crazy idea that we could bring this technology with a couple of modifications into K-12, and so we launched Google Apps into K-12. I signed the state of Oregon to a state level deal, and how I knew we were onto something was when I signed that contract. The day we signed that with Oregon, 23 school districts signed up immediately. That's how I knew we were onto something, because there was a need, a hunger for bringing technology in education. So I did that, worked with a number of institutions, worked with a number of school districts, worked with a number of states for a couple of years. But the craziest idea I had at Google was when I saw this demo machine called a Chromebook. And this Chromebook thing, this is a little inside baseball, this Chromebook thing wasn't meant for education. It was a consumer tool. It was definitely going to be an enterprise tool, but it wasn't meant for education as a market because our education team at that point was like 5 people. It wasn't very deep. But I saw the Chromebook, and I went to Sundar and the Chrome team and pitched them the idea of bringing the Chromebook into education because I thought it was perfect for education, both on the user end and on the administration side. After some persistence and arm twisting, they gave me a shot. So literally me and a 23-year-old marketing manager got on the road for 6 months and went out and talked to tech directors about what we could do with Chromebooks in education. And this was in the middle of the iPad revolution. Administrators, tech directors were struggling with how to manage the technology that was coming into their schools. And the Chromebook did something that was amazing. It had a lot of user benefits, right? Easy to use, easy to boot up, boots up quickly. You don't have to worry about storage. You don't have to worry about cost. It was a relatively cheap machine. So it had a lot of user benefits. Battery lasted all day. But the real benefit were on the administration side, right? You can manage all the Chromebooks from one place. One person can manage all the devices. You can set them up by organizational units as much as you possibly want to. You could create a network so that students can bring the machines home and they are still on your network, so they're not bringing viruses or malware onto your campus. You know, all these benefits that grew out of Chromebook were built from those early days on when we launched Chromebooks in education. Even my reality distortion field couldn't predict how big these tools would be in education. I knew that we would have an impact in education with Chromebooks, but I did not think that it would be the #1 device this many years later. I did not think that we would have 50 million devices in the education space by the time I left Google. I did not think that we would have 100 million users using Google App Tools, or what we call G Suite now, or what they call G Suite. I feel like I still work there. What they call G Suite tools around the world. I remember we went on a bus tour. We were so excited that we had reached 2 million subscribers back in 2008 that we went on a bus tour to celebrate the fact that we had 2 million subscribers using Google tools in classrooms and universities around the world. And by the time I left Google, we had more than 100 million students using these tools. Anyway, really excited about all the work I was able to do at Google. And believe it or not, I left Google so I can bring it to the next level. And for me, the next level is to really focus on technology as an enabling capability. How do we use technology to improve equity, diversity, access, inclusion in the education space? That's what I want to focus on, and that's what I've been focusing on since I left Google in June, with a number of different projects. And this passion that I have for education is personal for me. I am a first-generation American who was born and raised in Hell's Kitchen, New York, old school Hell's Kitchen. And if you want to know what it was like to grow up in old school New York or old school Hell's Kitchen, there's a great documentary that just came out on Netflix called Crack. And I was getting flashbacks. I was getting post-traumatic stress disorder from watching those clips, because that's what life was like in New York in Hell's Kitchen in the 70s and 80s. So I did not grow up in a great environment. I grew up with a single mother, like many of my friends did. I grew up on welfare and food stamps. I grew up with very little. My mother came to this country looking for a better life. Didn't really find it, but tried to provide me the opportunities to find a better life. And because of education, I get to talk to you guys. I graduated high school, I went to college, I went to graduate school, and here I am talking to you because of education and all the work that I've done. Now, one of the reasons I left Google is because in all those years, 15 years at Google, 7 years at Accenture, in whatever kind of influential role I've been in, or some kind of power role, or being in a room, with the big players like Microsoft and Facebook and Apple, and just being at that level, I didn't get to meet a lot of people who had my background. I didn't get to meet a lot of people who are making very critical decisions about technology, about the future of work, that had my background, that had a similar type of experience growing up. And so I can make one of two assumptions, and this is partly why I left Google. Assumption number one is that the reason I haven't met anyone, but I've been able to be successful and play at this level, is because I'm a super genius and I have a 900 IQ, and that's what my wife thinks I think. Or there are millions of students who are just like me, who have capability, have capacity to be geniuses, have an unbelievable talent and gift that we are missing out on. We are missing out on so much talent. We're missing out on so many opportunities. We're missing out on so many inventions that are out there in these students, and they just stay there because they never have the opportunity. So that's the assumption I'm going with, and that's the problem that I'm trying to solve. How do we use technology to create the opportunities for students who are growing up like I grew up, give them the opportunity to succeed because they have the capacity and the capability to do that? That's what I'm trying to solve right now, and that's where my passion comes from. And I'm working with a number of organizations that are trying to do the same thing at the organizational level, at the university level, at the K-12 level, and organizational in around the world. That's what I'm focused on. Now, what I want to talk about is this idea of digitalization and where we are with digitalization. And by digitalization, let me define it. I mean everything that has to do with technology. Computer science, artificial intelligence, machine learning, AR, VR, automation, robotics, the whole package. I'm talking about the whole thing. What we need to understand is that this digitalization era that we're in right now seems overwhelming to us, right? We are having this conversation via video. We have meetings via Zoom. We have Zoom fatigue. We're worried about students being on their devices too long. We have documentaries about why social media is bad. We talk about technology as this overwhelming thing that's taking over our lives. But what we really need to understand is that we are literally at the very, 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 very beginning of this. I can't emphasize that enough. We are cavemen and women when it comes to digitalization and where we will be in the next 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. Let me give you an example. Right before I left Google had a breakthrough in quantum computing. And don't shut off your video. I'm not going to get deep into quantum computing. I'm not going to define it. You can think about, the best way, I guess, to think about quantum computing, it's computing squared. I don't know, I just made that up. But Google had a breakthrough in quantum computing. All major organizations, Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, IBM, are trying to get breakthroughs in quantum computing. But this is the breakthrough that Google had. They were the first organization to do this. If you took one of those mathematical formulas, one of those things that just spins in circles until it gets to zero forever and ever and ever, and you fed one of those never-ending equations to a supercomputer, the world's most powerful supercomputer, it would take that supercomputer 10,000 years to process that equation. The breakthrough that Google had was they did it in 300 seconds. 10,000 years versus 300 seconds. Now, they didn't do this on a MacBook Pro. They didn't do this on a Chromebook. They did this in a lab with lots of scientists and lab coats and big machines and carbon fiber connections and giant data centers. But it was a huge breakthrough. 300 seconds. Think about what that's going to mean in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, in the next 20 years. We are literally talking about Star Trek stuff here. We're talking about cities and clouds. We're talking about levitation. We're talking about being able to transport things at speeds that we couldn't even imagine. We are at the very, 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 very beginning of this. It's the equivalent of two people sitting like this back when the Industrial Revolution started 100 years ago or 150 years ago and saying, in the future, you will be able to communicate face-to-face with anyone in the world at the same time. And people would be blown away by that idea. And here we are. That's where we are with digitalization. We're at the very beginning of this. And digitalization has been coming at us in a very gradual way. It's not all at once. It's not this thing that just showed up one day. It's been happening very gradually. Take supermarkets, for example. Think about the technology that we used in supermarkets. We went from machines, cashier machines, and label guns. Remember, I worked in a supermarket. I remember label guns. You'd go around and label all the cans as fast as you could. Everything on the shelf had a label on it, right? Or a price on it. We went from that to cashier machines that you could type in the total, type in how much someone gave you, and it would tell you how much change to give back. And those of us that were cashiers before that were like, that's not fair. They don't have to learn how to count. Like, we had to learn how to give back change when we were cashiers. And that was a nightmare for me back then. Then we went to these scanning machines where you didn't need to know the price of anything. You could just take something and scan it, and the cashier would just scan. And then we went through automatic payments, right, where you couldn't pay by a check or cash. You use cards and you just tap machines. Or now you have self-service checkout, and Amazon saying, well, why does anybody need to check anything out at all? Why can't you just check yourself in, take what you want, and then just walk out of the store? And that's where we find ourselves today with digitalization in supermarkets, where in Korea, in Singapore, and in other places, you don't even find people that work that process anymore. It's completely automated. And so it's been happening very gradually. The pandemic is causing these changes to happen even more rapidly. So it's no longer a steady growth. Now we're looking at hockey stick growth. Because if you think about the business world, and if you're a COO or a business manager, or you're an owner of a company, and you think about your business over the past 9 months or so, and you ask yourself what the biggest risk was to your business, it was people. People were the biggest risk to your company. And that was a huge factor, whether people gathered in spaces and call centers, whether people gathered in meat packing plants, or people gathered in spaces where everyone worked together, right? All that are issues that businesses are looking at to think about. And if you are a business owner, what you're trying to do is come up with ways to eliminate people as quickly as possible from the process work, from the repetitive work. And so what that means to education is that we need to look at education and think about what we're teaching our students and be honest with ourselves, which is that if we're teaching students things that we know machines can do better, are we failing our students? Are we teaching them things that they're not going to be able to use in whatever job they end up in or whatever career they end up doing? Machines are doing things that humans can do faster and faster and faster. And instead of thinking about this being a battle between machines and humans and the interaction between those two and who's going to win, this isn't the Matrix. This isn't Terminator. What we need to do is think about machines and technology and digitalization, and then ask ourselves, how do we take human skills to interact with those machines in collaboration, in cooperation? That's what the future of learning needs to look like. So what we need to do is double down on what I call human skills. And these human skills are skills that we've been talking about for a long time, right? Problem solving, critical thinking, collaboration, the ability to learn, creativity, some combination of that, right? These human skills. We've been talking about these skills for so long, we call them 21st century skills. We're not thinking about the fact that we're literally almost 22 years into the 21st century and we're still talking about 21st century skills. And if you want to trigger me, call them soft skills. They're not soft. They're unbelievably hard to master. I'm 53 years old. There's no way I've mastered any of those skills in any sort of way. These aren't soft, they're critical. So when I think about my 6-year-old daughter, and by the way, I have a 28-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a 6-year-old. That's right, I like one kid at a time. But when I think about my 6-year-old going to school every day, as she does now, she goes to a school here, a Montessori school here in Phoenix. As I think about her going to school every day, I could care less really what the subjects are that she's going to learn. I want her to learn these critical, essential skills. The topic, the concept, the subject can be anything. If you want her to study ancient art history, okay. If you want her to study American history before 1960, okay. Whatever the subject is doesn't really matter to me. What I want her to be able to do is have those deep skills for problem solving, critical thinking, collaboration. So there's no longer a matter of taking a subject, having kids memorize facts about those subjects, and then doing an assessment, testing them to see if they memorize those facts, because you can just ask a machine the same question and get an answer in 1 second. The critical thing is, how are they delivering those skills? How are they developing those skills inside those subjects? Are they collaborating better? Are they problem solving better? Are they critically thinking better? Are they being more creative with what they have? That's what I want my student, what I want my kid to focus on. And it's important to understand that this is relatively a new thing. We've been talking about these skills for a long time, but we've always looked at them as secondary skills. And here's an interesting idea that you don't hear a lot from people in my position at this, the people who talk about this stuff. I don't believe that education is broken. It's not. Actually, if you look at education on a macro level, education is doing better than it's ever done. High school graduation rates are the highest they've ever been, ever. The content that we teach students is so hard today compared to 40 years ago that I can't help My 19-year-old with homework, I stopped helping him with homework when he was like in 5th grade because it just got too hard for me. Education isn't broken. It's that the world has dramatically changed. And the world has shifted to digitalization. And what we need to understand is that it's not about fixing education or transforming education or reinventing education or whatever those words are. I don't like any of those. Here's what it comes down to for me in a very simple way. What we need to do in education is exactly what our forefathers in education did when the Industrial Revolution started. They built an amazing education system for the future they faced. What we need to do is the same thing. Build a system, build a learning model, use education and taking the best ideas of what we've learned over the past 100 and 150 years and build an education system that faces the future. And so we need to be a little bit of a futurist to think about what that future looks like so that we are focused on the right things for our students. It is no longer about jobs. It's not even really about careers. No one has a career anymore. Very few people have careers. Most people work on projects. In one of my YouTube videos, when I left Google, people kept asking me, what are you doing next? What's the next thing? And I kept trying to say that there isn't a next thing. There's 10 next things that I want to do at the same time. And this is, to me, a model of what the future of work looks like. Taking your gifts, your talents, and focusing on problems that you want to solve in lots of different areas. That's what the future looks like when you think about the career model. So even this concept that we talk about in education right now, which is preparing kids for college and career, or college or career, or college and career ready, why are we shooting so low? That's not going to change anything. That's not going to change our systems in the most vulnerable communities like the one I grew up in. We don't need people like me getting jobs. I mean, that's going to have an economic impact. But what we really need are change makers. We need policy makers, influential people. We need inventors and researchers and entrepreneurs. We need wealth in these communities. Getting a job should be a fallback position for our students. So we need to rethink what education is for the future that we face. So I hope that it's a calling, that it's not just taking education and reinventing it. That doesn't make any sense. It's literally thinking about the future and building a system that supports that future for our students. And that's what we need to focus on. Because these human skills don't go away. Machines are going to take a long time to be good problem solvers and good critical thinkers and good collaborators. It's just machines will learn what we tell them to learn. And these human skills aren't in competition with machines. They are in cooperation with these machines. And so what we need to do is focus on those human skills. Now, as we think about those human skills, if you would have asked me a year ago, are there skills that are more important than others? I would have said, no, they're all really important. They should all be learned at the same time. But the pandemic has had me reframe that because I think that there is a priority to these skills. The one that we need to focus on first, right off the bat, as deep as we possibly can, is this idea of the ability to learn. Ability to learn is essential and critical. This concept of lifelong learning isn't just a motto. It isn't just something we say anymore. It has to be real because things are happening so much faster that someday our students won't be in front of us anymore and they won't have the experts to help them learn. They're going to need to learn how to do it, and they have to start as early as possible. But this ability to learn, I got to be clear, I'm not talking about the ability to outline a textbook or the ability to study for a test or the ability to memorize things from a book. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the ability to learn starts with self-awareness, right? It starts with this idea that I don't know how to do something. I know where I can go learn how to do it. And then I know whether I've done it well or not and what I need to do to make it better, all in my own ecosystem. I'll give you an example. About a year and a half ago, I wanted to launch my YouTube channel. And so I went to my daughter, who has a degree in film. This is what she does for a living. She She makes unbelievable videos. If you watch CDC videos, there's a good chance that her branding studio made that video. She works for Courageous, which is part of CNN, and she makes fake news. Anyway, I went to her, very talented video editor, video maker, writer, editor, all those things. She's brilliant at that. And I said, listen, I want to start a YouTube channel. And at this point, I knew zero about video editing. I knew zero about recording video. I mean, I could record a clip on my phone like anyone else, but the idea of videotaping something or recording something and then putting it together in a story format or editing it together just was foreign to me. I had no concept of that. If you go to my Instagram account, which I'm sure by now all of you are following me, you can see that I'm a photographer. I post lots of pictures. Technically, I'm a professional photographer because I've sold some of my photos. But I didn't even know my really good camera. I've always had a good camera, but I never knew my camera even had a record button. That's where I'm starting. And so I went to my daughter and I said, hey, I don't know anything about this. I want to start a YouTube channel. Where do I start? Well, she laughed for 10 minutes about me starting a YouTube channel. And then she said, okay, listen, shoot in 1080. You don't need to shoot in 4K. Shoot at 24 frames per second, double your shutter speed, keep your ISO at 100 to keep noise down. If you go outside, that's all going to blow out your exposure. So you don't want to increase your shutter speed. So what you need to do is get a variable ND filter so you can control the light that hits the lens. I said, cool, thank you. Okay, here's my next question. What the hell do any of those words mean? I knew zero about videography, zero about editing, zero about putting this all together. And now I'm recording this on a good camera. You're watching an edited version of what I built here. If you go to my YouTube channel, you can see the growth of my skills in videography from the first couple of videos that look like, hostage videos to the last couple of videos, which are much better. I can have the best debates or arguments with my daughter or anyone in the film world about whether it's better to shoot 442 or 440, whether you should shoot in 10-bit or 8-bit, what the color dynamic range should be when you create a video clip. I can have the best debates about all those things. And I learned how to do those things on my own. And here's the thing. It's a mindset. It's the shift from I don't know how to do something to I need to learn how to do it. And this isn't even just for students. This works for adults too. I can't tell you how many people come to me, adults with degrees and professional jobs who make a lot of money. They come to me and they say, hey, you're very creative. I'm just not very creative. I'm just not creative. You might be saying that yourself. Or I see people say, or I hear people say, I'm just not good with technology. Just not tech savvy like you are. Just not good with technology. You might say that yourself. Or they might say something like, I've just never been good at math. Math is not my strong suit. I'm just not good with it. And my response back to these people, and this is why I don't have a lot of friends, my response back is, no, you need to understand that you've chosen not to be creative. You've chosen not to be good with technology. You've chosen not to be good with math. These are choices that you're making, whether you realize it or not. Because everything that you need to learn how to be good at those things is out there. You just have to go learn how to be good at it. You're choosing not to, and that's okay. If you're choosing not to be creative, that's fine, but just say, I've chosen not to be creative. For example, I am not a bad cook. I don't say I'm a bad cook. I just say that I've chosen not to be a good cook. That's not an area I care about. That's not a concern area for me. I don't want to be a good cook. I can make pizza. I can make boboli pizza, and I can make like spaghetti and meat sauce, and I can grill steaks. I can do basic stuff, and that's enough for me to survive. If I want to make lasagna and I didn't know how to do it, and even if you gave me a recipe, it might be terrible the first 4 or 5 times I make lasagna. I have no interest in being a good cook, but by no means am I a bad cook. I've just chosen not to be a good cook. And so it's this mindset for our students where we have to give them the tools. And so this ability to learn, the ability to to do an assessment, to determine where to go learn, to determine what's out there, to think about education, not in terms of the classes that we offer them, but everything that's out there, right? The world is at their fingertips. They can learn anything. Why are they only taking classes in our schools when they could be taking online classes from college around the world? Even some of those free classes that don't offer certificates at the end, I don't need a certificate to tell me that I've become a better filmmaker. I just have the evidence from my YouTube channel and the comments that I get from people. This idea of learning and lifelong learning is absolutely critical, and that's where we need to start. The second one that I want to focus on while I have your time and attention is this idea of problem solving. Because I'm hoping that we can have a shift in how we think about the future of work, and problem solving is the gateway to do that. We're still thinking in the old world. I can't tell you how many times people come up to my kids, even my 6-year-old, and ask her, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? By the way, her answer is president. She wants to be the first female president. But, hopefully it'll happen by the time, she's 22 or 35 and can be president. But people ask my 6-year-old, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the reason they ask that question is because that's what they were asked when they were kids. But it's an old world question. It comes from the old world, when jobs were more stable, when jobs didn't move that much. That's not true anymore. Jobs are constantly shifting and changing. I'm working in a space called the internet that didn't exist when I graduated from graduate school. There was no way for me to prepare for a job at Google because Google didn't exist when I graduated from high school, from college, from graduate school. That's only going to continue and get worse if you want to look at it that way. I look at it as getting better, but some people look at that as getting worse. I have friends that are working in industries that you don't even know exist right now. This idea of what do you want to be when you grow up, like you're going to be one thing, doesn't exist anymore. And we need to shift our language. And so what I think we should be asking students instead is, what problem do you want to solve? What problem spins in your head? Doesn't have to be a social problem. It doesn't have to be like solving climate change. It could be any problem. It could be making better microphones like this, or better lights, or better cameras. It could be making cars go faster. Whatever it is, what problem is it that you want to solve? My 28-year-old is solving the problem of making sure that there are more females in the filmmaking industry because there's not a lot there. So it's important to think about the problem that you want to solve. And if our students don't know, then they can spend time thinking about the problem that they want to solve. So that's the first question. The second question is just as important as the first question, which is, how do you want to solve it? How do you want to take your gifts, your talents, your experiences, the things that you're passionate about to solve that problem? And that's important. Because if you think about it, when you think about a problem, there are millions of ways to solve a problem. So, for example, if a student said, I want to solve climate change, you might be inclined to say to that student, oh, climate change, okay, you need to be a climate scientist, or you need to study global sustainable development, or you need a degree in environmental studies. Okay, there's lots of ways to solve the problem of climate change that way, but what if they're a gifted photographer? What if they've been taking photographs since they were 5 years old and have an unbelievable eye to capture emotion, or just want to be great visual storytellers? What if the way they can solve climate change is by going out and documenting climate change and showing the world what happens with climate change from their perspective? Maybe they have a new angle on climate change. So how you want to solve the problem is important. What are your areas of interest? What gifts do you have to solve that problem that you're passionate about? And then the next question is just as important as the first two questions, which is, and this ties back to the first thing that we talked about, what do you need to know to solve that problem? What are the knowledge, the skills, and the abilities that you need to have to solve that problem? Where can you start developing those knowledge, skills, and abilities? What classes can you take, online, offline, at different universities, at different high schools, on YouTube, in video format? What's out there? What newsletters are out there? What blogs are out there? What what is out there that you can start diving into so that you can learn what you need to know, so that you can build the skills to solve that problem. Now, all of a sudden, the jobs that our students will face will be aligned with this track. Either it will be aligned with climate change so that they can build skills, or it will be aligned with photography. So when the job comes up from Larry's used car lot that they're looking for a photographer to take pictures of used cars that come in, that student might jump at the opportunity, not because it's in environmental studies, but because they're going to continue to build their skills in photography. Jobs all of a sudden become a ladder of building skills and getting better and the experiences that you need to really solve the problem that you're passionate about. It's important to think about the future from that perspective. Now, the last thing I want to talk about with all this, tying all this together, is I'm very optimistic about the future. We now live in a long tail economy. Digitalization has given us the opportunity to live in a space where we can do anything, where we can be very niche, where we can find a problem that we're passionate about, find a gift that we have, and then go out and solve that problem in a very niche way. There's audiences everywhere. We no longer have to be tied to what the group wants, or we don't have to be tied to the majority wants. When I was a kid, if I wanted to start a business, I would need to go get a storefront, inventory, supplies, cash. I'd have to look in the community and see what was the common things that everybody wanted, and then put that in my store, carry inventory. All of these things put pressure on running your own business. And today, our students can start a business with a laptop. So when students come to me and say, how do you get a job at Google? I'm like, forget Google. Start a company and let Google buy you. We can look at the world differently, especially for our most vulnerable students, right? You got to understand that the Latino market is $1 trillion market. The African American market is $1 trillion market. We have an amazing opportunity to help our we have an amazing opportunity to help our students build the skills that they need to thrive in that future. As I said at the beginning, I think we have a tremendous opportunity to take digitalization, to take technology, to really think about what good learning looks like. We know what good learning looks like. We have all the research and evidence that we need. How do we use technology to bring those ideas to life? Not how do we use technology to replace the old way we did things, but how do we take technology and bring the best ideas that we have out so that our students can build the knowledge, the skills, and abilities that they're going to need to match the talents and passions that they have to solve the problems that they're going to be passionate about. That's what I hope we do with technology. That's what I hope we do in education. And like I said earlier, if there's any way that I can help, you let me know. Please feel free to reach out. Thank you. And maybe I will see you guys in person next year.